Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwan, and you were watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about Spacemarine chapters as we get into the Tiger Claws, a unique chapter that was lost, found, and then lost again. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K content every single day, and if you have any suggestions, comment down below. Now my hope is that you use this lore to build your own Spacemarine chapter. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Tiger Claws. The Tiger Claws were a loyalist Space Marine chapter with an ill-fated history that ended in tragedy. While unclear, the chapter might have been part of the 21st Founding, also known as the Cursed Founding, a time when the Adeptus Mechanicus attempted to perfect and remove the identified deficiencies in flawed Adeptus Astartes gene seed. This became known as Project Homo Sapien Novus. Unfortunately, the Adeptus Mechanicus genitors proved far less skilled in genetic sciences than the Emperor of Mankind, and their efforts resulted in the development of seriously flawed genetic seed that was used to craft the organ implants of the new chapters. Whether the Tiger Claws truly came from the Cursed Founding cannot be verified, but what seems to be certain is that the chapter shared a lineage with another defective Astartes chapter, the Astro Claws. Like the Astro Claws, speculation exists that points to the Tiger Claws having the gene seed of either Gilliman of the Ultramarines Legion or Lionel Johnson of the Dark Angels Legion, due to the supposed undegenerated quality of gene seed, as well as certain factors of temperament and style of warfare. Similar obscurity exists on the chapter's actions after its founding. The only thing that can be said for certain is that the chapter fought in and around the Maelstrom Zone, and held a fortress monastery on the planet of Crota, and most likely adhered to the tenets of the Codex Astartes. The Tiger Claws honorably wore primarily black power armor, with an orange shoulder plate, as well as orange on the lower legs that faded into the black of the upper legs. The chapter's badge was a front-facing black tiger head on a field of orange, but was later changed to a black tiger's head facing to the left in profile, similar in appearance to the Astro Claws. Due to the Space Marine's autonomy, the chapter's deeds and eventual disappearance was never recorded by Imperial historians. The consecutive failures to report to the High Lords of Terra forced the Imperium to declare the Tiger Claws chapter lost. Centuries after the chapter's disappearance, and far from the Maelstrom Zone, in the Segmentum Pacificus, a single Space Marine strike cruiser called the Bakasura emerged from the warp. The cruiser belonged to the Tiger Claws chapter, and contained over 100 battle brothers of the chapter that was declared destroyed over 14 centuries before. The ship appeared to have been subjected to severe time distortion in the warp, and for those on board, no more than a few solar months had passed by. Wasting no time, and like true warriors, the Tiger Claws answered the call for help from their brothers, the Stormwing Space Marine Strike Force, aiding them in battle against Dark Eldar slavers. After exterminating the Xenos threat, the remaining Tiger Claws resupplied and made their way back to the location of their fortress monastery on the world of Crota. There they found that in their long absence, their ancient sun had expanded and rendered their world a lifeless husk, and that their chapter was nothing more than an all-but-forgotten legend. Captain Vitala of the Tiger Claws, now the de facto master of what was effectively a dead chapter, traveled to Holy Terra to petition for the release of the chapter's gene seed, and the right and title to rebuild the Tiger Claws. Captain Vitala disappeared without a trace while awaiting his petition's hearing before the High Lords of Terra, and as a result, his suit was summarily dismissed. The Bakusara, last seen conducting operations in the region of the chapter's homeworld, could not be located by void ships sent to the area to track the remaining Tiger Claws down. Centuries later, it was discovered that the Astro Claws decided to secretly absorb the remnants of their long-lost successor chapter. The addition of the Tiger Claws to the chapter ultimately led to the Astro Claws chapter master, Luft Huron's dream of expanding his chapter into a force with the strength of one of the Space Marine legions of antiquity, in order to pacify the Maelstrom permanently and crush mankind's enemies. Some Imperial scholars contend when the last remaining Tiger Claw survivors were taken in by the Astro Claws, these once loyal battle brothers grasped a poisonous viper to their heart, thus causing them to eventually fall from grace. Under the leadership of Huron, the Astro Claws would eventually betray the Imperium. Many Tiger Claws made a name for themselves within the Astral Claws chapter. Corian Sumatras, a mysterious, ambered-eye and great-faced figure, Sumatras rose swiftly to prominence, first as one of the chapter's honor guard. His fierce savagery paved his way up the ranks, and by the outbreak of the Badap War, he had not only been made captain of the 2nd Battle Company, but also gained the wardenship of the world of Piraeus within the Tyrant's domain. He also won the coveted title of Tyrant's Champion, slaying the chapter's first company captain in order to attain the honor in ritual combat. He came to be one of Huron's most trusted officers. This favoritism was distrusted by some within the chapter, who believed him a lost son, which is to say a scion of the Tiger Claws chapter, given a new identity and concealed in the Astral Claws ranks prior to the war. Sumatras was believed to have been killed in action, leading the defense of the fortress station of Sentinel Sigma on the edge of the Badab system, just before the final siege of Badab Primaris, although his body was never conclusively identified by the Inquisitorial Forensic Conclave. And those were 40 facts on the Tiger Claws chapter. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to share it with your friends on Facebook or Reddit, whatever social media you guys use. It really helps out the channel when you do so. So thank you ahead of time. The Tiger Claws chapter really highlights how independent a Space Marine chapter can be. They are so independent that they could just disappear with no trace. Because even if it's a chapter that has a fortress monastery on a specific planet, the Imperium believes that they trust the chapter to defend that planet, so they don't really check up on that chapter unless, or for the only purpose of aid, and for the only purpose of making sure that the gene seed that they have has not been corrupted or is not degrading. So you'll have Adeptus Mechanicus ships going to the planet and like every now and then checking to make sure, or asking for the gene seed tithes, just to make sure that the gene seed is pure. But a Space Marine chapter by itself, it is alone. It can work with or without the Imperium, which is part of the reason why the whole Badap War happened. That's a whole story in itself. But what I hope the Tiger Claws chapter shows you is that if you're creating your own chapter, you can say that the chapter has been away from the Imperium for a really long time, but still fighting alongside, or fighting for the Emperor, and still is loyal. They're just separate from the Imperium. Another thing that this chapter highlights is the fun you could have with time anomaly within the warp. So you can have a chapter who went into the warp, came out in the future, so in the current Imperium, or you could even have a Space Marine chapter from, like, centuries in the future who has come back, and you can play around with that. It might be a little harder, but if you're just playing with your friends and you want to build up that lore of, like, this is actually a chapter that comes from 50K or something badass like that, you can definitely do that, just because it happens now. Time anomaly and time travel is something that happens when you travel through the warp. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is if you are creating any other type of army, and you're creating the lore for like a Imperial Guard regiment, or if you're creating an Orc regiment or an Orc clan or anything like that, you can say that the planet, the origin, or where the Imperial Guard regiment originated from, was actually a Space Marine controlled planet way back in the day, but that Space Marine chapter disappeared, or for some reason was killed off, and now all you have is just an empty fortress monastery, and your regiment, or the Imperial regiment, like, took shelter in that fortress monastery, and the iconography might be of, like, Space Marines. Like, you could have a general or a captain that has Space Marine armor, or Space Marine like shoulder plates, things like that, and then still add that fluff of, like, It's an Imperial Guard regiment. I'm using the Imperial Guard Codex rules, but it has the flavor of a Space Marine chapter just because they lived on a planet where Space Marines used to be a thing, and now they're just legends, and now they're just like walking about and working. So I hope that helps with you building your own lore for your army. And again, if you guys enjoy our content, share it with your friends. It really helps out the channel when you do so. If you want to support us a little bit more, jump on over to Patreon, link in the description. A simple $1 a month helps us create more videos for you guys. If you can't support us on Patreon, we understand. Simply by liking, commenting, and sharing, you're telling YouTube, hey, I like this content, I want more. And it helps us out as well. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. This is Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.
Oh, I did pick up my